We open on a scene in Mirkwood, in a small crater whose banks are made up of fallen trees or roots. In the bottom of that crater is a tiger, Raja, and a man who's wearing clothing that's been all ripped to hell. It hangs off of him limply in these strands, these rags. Bruce, you don't remember last night. And as the sun creeps up overhead and shines a couple of rays down through the canopy, you can see the mist, the fog that's rolling through Mirkwood, and it kind of falls down into the crater that you and Raja wake up in. You don't feel well. There's something wrong with Raja as well. He seems wounded, both physically and mentally, and there's something wrong with his eyes. He seems defeated, he seems weak, and he seems blind. He sniffs around occasionally in order to get his bearings, and then kind of hunches back down in this low whimper or growl. You can see that he's sustained some fairly serious injuries. You look down at yourself and realize so have you, though you don't remember it.
Bruce will kind of squint as he holds his arm. There's a gash going across it. He starts to look around, but realizes he's lost his spectacles and can't see much of anything. And so he's squinting to kind of make out everything around him. As he goes around to Raja, we'll kind of offer a hand onto his nose, as both of us can't see very well.
Raja winces and sniffs, startled by your movements, not realizing who you are, until he sniffs you and remembers.
There's a moment where Bruce gets close to his face, noticing that Raja is breathing very heavily and not moving very much. He kneels down beside him, and just as he's running his hand along his coat, happens upon a couple of puncture wounds that are oozing a sort of fluid, sort of viscous substance that just doesn't feel like blood. He catches some of it on his fingers and holds it up to his face and smells it.
You're trying to identify the substance?
Yes.
Okay. So this is only a hard check because it's a common venom that you're smelling, but I mean, you're smelling it, so add 2 black dice.
I have knack for it on alchemy, so I'm going to remove those black dice.
Yeah, I remember.
4 yellows versus 3 perps. I have 4 successes, 3 threat.
Okay, shoot, threat.
Yeah.
Let me think.
Into some, like a cut on his finger.
No, that would kill him.
Re-Hulk out.
You are able to identify it as venom from a Mirkwood spider. You haven't seen a spider up until recently, up until these last couple of days. You've never seen one in person, but you have dealt in trades and whatnot where people had some of this venom. It's actually worth a decent amount of coin if you were to recover any of it. Certainly not enough in Raja's wound to do so. The threat is you have no knowledge of how to cure this at this time. The nature of this venom, by the way, is that as long as it's active in a creature system, which in this case it's no longer active for Raja, but were it active, the victim would suffer wounds equal to the amount of damage that the spider does. So in this case, his base damage would be 5. So Raja would take 5 damage each round while it's active. So it's a deadly venom. That being said, it's no longer active in its system.
Standing back up, Bruce kind of begins to mumble to himself as he's trying to think of something that might actually help Raja's case, some plants that he could find of some sort to make at least some paste or medicine that might help Raja. But again, he's lost his spectacles and he can't really see, and so he's squinting and he's looking out into the trees, into the foliage, and he begins to walk towards the trees, and all of a sudden he steps into what seems to be a puddle that splashes up his ankle. And as Bruce looks down, he just feels small as he looks at the footprint that he's standing in.
Welcome to Melting Plot, an actual play podcast that features a cast of characters randomly selected from popular fiction. Each season, our heroes attempt to survive an apocalyptic scenario to find out how their characters might handle themselves at the end of the world. If you're new to Melting Plot, I recommend that you start at the beginning of the season so you can experience the story the way the players do. This is Season 2, and Middle-earth is in peril. Frodo was unable to destroy the One Ring, and Sauron's army covered the world in hatred and darkness. What little hope remains is tied to the fate of a few heroes willing to resist. But will it be enough? About 60 miles to the south and west of Bruce and Raja, Bones, Archer, and Jasmine enter Brackenshire, city that they thought would be safe, and soon realize is just ruins. As you're looking into the market square, you can see the broken husks of buildings. And there was at one point a large wall that ran around the city and is now just ruins. Fairly closely on the inside of this wall, you see like a 3-story guard tower made of stone, but about half of it has been broken away.
I'd like to do a perception check to see if I can determine how recently this has been. Like, is the dirt settled? Is there moss growing on things? Are things still smoking? When did this happen? Roughly, to determine maybe how long it's been a ruin.
Are there even any recent footprints?
Right.
So, Archer, you descend off of your horse, and you kneel down into the dirt, trying to find footprints, maybe walking in and amongst houses, right at the entrance of this town, into what maybe used to be an inn. So as you're creeping amongst the ruins at the very edge of the town, you're starting to piece together the story of what happened here. I'll take a perception check. It's probably hard.
Alrighty. Fun. It's a complete wash.
I would also like to make a perception check, but not so much looking for what happened. I want to see if I can perceive any threats or movement, anything sounds within the city.
So that for you will be vigilance then.
So I'm way
and
better
it's
at
perception
vigilance.
for Archer, who is actually searching actively to try to find. So you're trying to keep a watchful eye open. So go ahead and give me that roll. It's average.
One success.
Okay. So Archer, you creep through some of the rubble, and you're unable to find anything that makes a ton of sense as far as time frame for when this happened. So maybe even some conflicting data. For example, you might see some fairly fresh footprints, but an old building that looked like it had burnt down, you feel the wood and it's cold. So it's hard to say, and that's not necessarily because it was confusing what happened here so much as you just haven't been able to piece together the story yet. But doing so taxes you. So please take 2 strain as you're still recovering from your at-the-brink critical. Meanwhile, Bones from atop his horse is looking out over the city itself as you creep in through the rubble. And it seems safe so far. At least it seems quiet. The only noise that you hear is Archer digging through the rubble. But you don't immediately perceive any threats or really any life other than yourself. You see off to your right-hand side, maybe half a block into the city, the remains of an old watchtower. Looks like it was at one point 3 stories, but a good half of the building has been broken away and crumbled to dust. So if you'd like, you can set up camp there on the 3rd floor. The staircase remains enough that you can get up there, and it would give you a good vantage point over the city with 1.5 walls at your back to keep you safe from the wind.
What do you think happened here? I've never been to Brackenshire, but it wasn't that long ago that it was a viable city. I didn't expect to find a ruin.
I don't know. I hadn't heard anything about the city falling or being attacked, or I don't know what happened here, but I didn't hear about this.
You didn't hear anything about... this was your most successful settlement outside of Erebor. There was nothing? You don't keep track of current affairs?
I'm not exactly told about all of the current affairs. I pick up things here and there that I overhear, but no, I hadn't heard anything about this.
You should have a man on the inside. It's absolutely useless.
I wasn't trained as a spy.
That's true. It takes a special caliber of a person to be successful in that endeavor.
Jasmine actually reaches down kind of absentmindedly to scritch between Raja's ears and realizes that he's not there and just gets quiet again for a minute. But she wanders away from Archer and goes to find Bones.
Bones is doing tight loops around a couple of buildings at the entrance to the town itself, staying vigilant, watching to make sure nothing dangerous approaches or is still here. And so far, it seems safe.
Have you found anything?
I don't know that there's anything here to be found, to be honest. Looks like the place is in ruins. No signs of anybody being here, at least none that we can say for sure. I can't hear anything.
Do we want to stay here for him to heal?
I mean, we've come all the way here. I don't think we can leave now. And the ride wasn't good for him. I think we have to stay. The tower seems structural, seems good shape, be defensible. And we really don't know that there's anything dangerous here, although it's quite eerie.
Jasmine nods and looks over towards the river that the city seems to be nestled into. And she says, I'll go refill everyone's water skins so I can find a way to be helpful.
If she goes down to the river, will she remain in eyesight?
She can be. This town is fairly big. I mean, it was big. It built quickly, and it was built into a full settlement. So you can keep her in eyesight, but it's not a small town. It's a sprawling metropolis. In fact, you can see a few blocks back a fairly big manor, which probably housed the duke or whatever ruling council lived here. And you can see several districts, like a market district and a resident district. So if you stay where you're at, no, she could find a place that's hidden from you.
She will deliberately stay in eyesight.
I think at this point, Bones, since there seems to be no disagreement from it, is going to start taking stuff down from the horses, setting it at the base of the tower, waiting for Jasmine to get back to start actually making camp up there.
Bruce, as the hours go by, you start to realize, though you can't see, you also can't tell the passage of time in Mirkwood because it seems always dark. So at some point it's night, and you realize it, and at some point it's day again. It's hard to tell when those moments of transition occur. You and Rasha are stumbling around the forest and have been for some hours, and you realize that your companions have left. They're no longer here. They're not coming back for you. Raja can't see. Raja's sniffing around, trying to find his way. You have no food. You haven't eaten in a day or two.
Bruce takes a moment and kneels down next to Raja, looks in Raja's eyes, and is just kind of looking for some sort of Raja response at all.
Raja blinks a couple of times. He can't see, like you're in his face, but he can't see you. He starts sniffing around. He does this sad little whimper. And then he sniffs the air. And he starts slowly plodding his way back north, back towards the road. He's going slow because he can't see, so he's kind of smelling, and then he takes a couple of steps and so on, moving forward. And if you follow him, Bruce, he eventually leads you back to the road, where you see the aftermath of the Hulk.
Bruce squints and looks around at the damage and just has this sober moment of thought and reflection, looking at the burnt up webs, sorting through these different flashes of memory. It's just all green and sheer destruction, desperately trying to remember what happened and trying to piece together the events. And as he squints and tries to make out things in his surrounding, he finds his spectacles, only an arm's length in front of him. He would have surely stepped on them if he had continued to walk. I'll be spending a story point to find Bruce's glasses.
Your foot just hovers over your glasses. And just before you put your foot down, cracking the lenses, you stop. You look down. And that glint from the tiny ray of sun that's creeping in through the canopy bounces off the lenses, and you find them. They're scuffed up. Maybe the frame's bent a little bit, but they function. And for the listeners, I have all the story points now.
And for the listeners, that means the Hulk has no control. Still in this path, Bruce is going to take a moment to search to see if he can find his backpack or the rags of his shirt or maybe even the horse with rations. Anything else that can help him actually on this journey.
Give me a search check. It is a hard check, and since it's dark, throw a setback die in.
I've got 1 failure, 2 threat.
You search for a while, a long time. Time passes you by and you hardly realize it. You find nothing. Nothing of use. Soiled rations that have been scattered about through the mud. See these coiled up corpses of spiders. Suddenly, the density of this forest seems to reach in around you.
Bruce looking around and realizing that he can't scavenge anything. He's going to take a moment, stroke his chin as he thinks. He'll adjust his spectacles, cleaning them off on the rags of his shorts that somehow managed to stay on through all of this. Raja still looking around timidly, trying to pretend as if he can see, sniffing the air.
Raja stops, though, much quicker than you do, and again imploring, whimpering, and growling, and trying to get you to move on, trying to get you to go west.
And looking down with a sigh, Bruce just kind of silently nods at Raja, and they begin walking down the path.
So the day carries on in Brackenshore. Jasmine, you've refilled all of the water skins, and Bones, you've unloaded the 2 horses that you have still.
Archer's on the top floor of the tower in a bedroll. He slept in because he's still kind of recovering from his injuries. But he does kind of wake up and feels a little bit more mobile, a little more strength. It's still a strain to walk around, but he can't find his crossbow. So he's searching through it. He searches through all the bags and determines that it's not there. And so he's actually kind of pissed. Bones, where's my crossbow? Did we lose my crossbow?
We didn't lose it. We sold it for bandages. It was the only way.
This is not a joking matter. That's my favorite crossbow.
I know. I could tell when you named it after your mother. You must have cared about it deeply.
How dare you?
His crossbow's named Mallory.
You leave my mother out of this. I'm going to go see if we can find something useful. So he's looking. So if we're in a tower, there's presumably a barracks of some sort or something nearby. He's going to look for the nearest what looks like a military building or something to try to scavenge and see if he can find.
Okay, there are 4 buildings that you spot from on top of the tower here that seem like they would be good locations to search. One of them is the High Keep. It's farther back, the farthest from where you're at now, but is the biggest building. You can see it as the foothills ascend. You can see it atop one of those, and it's kind of a prominent figure right there. Down below, you can see a large building that appears to be a bathhouse. You can tell this by the large vats of water that have been set next to the building itself that you know is the reservoir where they either store or boil the water for the baths. You do see a brewery, and you also see the market square, which is one of kind of the place you picked through right at the beginning as you were searching through this to see if you could find out what happened here. It's your choice where you go. At this point, you don't see a barracks, but the other buildings and the other area, the market square, is prominent.
So Archer's going to walk. I'm going to pick the Citadel because he figures if there's going to be a guardhouse, it's going to be near
the High Keep.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Archer's going to head towards the High Keep, assuming that there has to be a guardhouse near that. So that's it's the biggest building. It seems.
Yeah, it's probably going to take you about 10 minutes to walk there. This is not a small settlement, but you can get there. Bones and Jasmine, what would you like to do as Archer heads out that way?
I'm definitely going to follow Archer.
Jasmine's not going to stay by herself, so she would follow as well.
Okay. As you depart, when you head down the streets towards the High Keep, We see a shot of that tower that now has your belongings kept on the top floor, the 3rd floor, as it kind of overlooks the city through the broken wall, and the horses are tied up somewhere near the base of that tower. As you pick your ways through the streets, the silence is complete, such that as you walk down these cobblestones, the footsteps that you take echo and bounce off of the walls and the buildings. And as you approach that high keep, you realize you have not seen bodies yet. You've not seen a single body. So what happened to this village? Hard to say. But I guess the prevailing assumption would be that it was orcs or goblins from the Misty Mountains that have taken slaves, or maybe meals, of these people. It's just strange that you don't see any yet. As you approach the high keep, there's a path that ascends up to the gate of it in a fairly steep manner, and it kind of sets the high keep on its plateau. It kind of sets it aside from the buildings down below to indicate that whoever lives here is of more importance. There are 2 large gates that enter in on the high keep itself, and you're able to push them open enough to squeeze through. They're certainly meant for large caravans or multiple ranks of horses. So the 3 of you on foot have no problem getting in. It actually kind of taxes you, Archer, to push the door open, but since you're on the mend, you don't take strain from it. Right inside the doors is a courtyard that is large enough to house a stable on one side and a smithy for horseshoes and tack on the other. And across the courtyard itself is the entrance to the keep. The keep has fallen to the same manner of disrepair as the rest of the buildings, in that there are walls broken here and there, corners of the building shattered away, and the doors leading in through the front are broken, and actually in such a manner that they are shattered inward or outward, hard to tell, but the entire frame of the door has also been cracked and broken.
Archer is going to do a vigilance check. Just seems like if there was going to be anything remaining in the city, the High Keep seems to be the most likely place as far as that people would congregate or something. So he just makes an assumption that if anything is, we haven't seen anything, but as we approach it, he wants to cautiously.
Are you specifically listening for movement and the signs of something else, or are you? What are you trying to accomplish?
Just a general readiness. I'm not looking. There's nothing that speaks to me to look for something specific, but it's just this, just in case.
Give me an average check. Upgrade it simply because. Here's what I have a hard time with in the system is trying to figure out what the check should be. Like, if I make it daunting, does that mean there's something hiding there, or what? So I'll make it an average, but upgrade it once, just for the sake of potentially having despair would be really fun.
A success, 2 advantage, and a triumph.
Okay, so what I want to do is I want to take that vigilance through the exploration of parts of this keep. So I want to give it to you as we go through, because there's stuff you'll see that is not readily available right now. So as you creep through the courtyard, nothing immediately jumps out at you as strange or dangerous. As you enter the keep, and your footsteps echo all the more off of the hard surfaces of the entry chamber and kind of bounce menacingly around, you detect the subtle scent of decay. And as you walk further in through the keep, through this large entry chamber, you start to smell it stronger and stronger. Soon you start to realize this is where the bodies are.
Do you smell that? That is rank.
It's the smell of death. You sure your crossbow's worth all this?
We need something to go on. What else are we doing here? We have to figure out what's happening.
Why are they all here, though? We haven't seen any other people.
Suddenly, you hear something loud on the roof. Some massive crash on the roof or some of the floors above you, somewhere deeper in the keep itself.
Oh, shit.
We should go.
Yeah, we need to get out.
Go where? If it's on the roof, if we step outside into the courtyard, it's gonna see us.
We need to hide at least.
If it's on the roof, either way, it must be getting in here somehow. It's keeping the bodies in here.
You hear a massive form slam down into the courtyard. This huge drop, and the cobblestones beneath it as it lands cracks and fly into the air. And because you're in the entry chamber, you look back, and just before it can react to you and turn to see you, you with your vigilance check are able to push your companions out of the way, so that when it looks back towards you, it sees nothing. So you push Bones and Jasmine behind some of the pillars in the entry hall, and you sneak to one side just before this thing turns. And what you see in the courtyard you have never seen or heard about before. Something that has crawled up from the deep places of the earth and lives here now. It is got a deep, pale, pink or red skin on its underside, but the top of it are these red plates that run like a dragon's scale down its back and over the tops of its arms and neck. And you see these large bone spurs that have kind of ripped their way out of its spine and out of its shoulders and out of its elbows. It's got 4 legs, and it walks on each of them. And one long, spined tail that ends in these kind of jagged, protruding bone spurs. It turns and it looks in your direction, and you can see its mandibles that open sideways. Again, these large bone clamps. It's silhouette 3, which means it is quite a bit bigger than the Hulk. It starts moving around the courtyard, obviously sensing some movement, but unable to see it. It starts crawling its way through, and each step it takes breaks more of the cobblestones, and it kind of creeps its way out, and then you see it and hear it as it starts to climb up the wall to the keep itself, gets to the top, and climbs down the other side and disappears somewhere into the city. You can't help but think of your horses. They'll probably be safe. Maybe you're more worried about yourselves.
So what now? What's the plan?
I don't know if it's wise to go back into the city right now. Not the way it just went.
Whatever we do, we have to be, we're gonna have to be quiet.
Are you going to lead the way on that?
What is that supposed to mean?
I mean, are you good at being quiet?
I can be whatever I need to be when the situation calls for it, okay?
His voice echoes a little bit through this open chamber, off the walls and the floors. Makes him wince even a little bit to realize how loud he is.
Well, I look forward to learning a thing or two from you.
Oh, I'll show you a thing or two. He kind of mumbles to himself. Realizes that she's right, but is just in a little also like butthurt about it.
Yeah.
So he just kind of trails off as he mumbles to himself and starts to look around for something interesting.
Okay.
If the princess bows to the spy master, who am I to stand in his way?
So you begin creeping your way through the keep itself. And you enter in on one of the dining halls. And here the table that would run along the length of the hall has been cracked, broken, tossed aside, maybe burnt or torn into kindling. But this was long ago that this happened. You see along the far wall a stack of bodies, just almost a hill of them that is set against the far wall itself, so you can't see anything of the far wall where you assume there may have been at one point a fireplace. Now it is just a hill of bodies.
Jasmine looks horrified and turns away from the sight.
Well, she should. They're your people. But not just your people. As you approach, you see not only Easterlings, but also goblins.
Is there any reason for Bones to believe that these things were not killed by this monster?
Give me a medicine check as you approach them to try to determine some of the causes of death. It's average.
5 success and a threat.
Okay, so the bodies of the Easterlings have weapon wounds on them, and a lot of these bodies have been consumed, eaten, or broken apart and just kind of regurgitated back into the pile. But some of the ones that you find intact, almost to a T, the Easterlings have weapon wounds on them. The goblins mostly do not. Most of the wounds on the goblins appears to be from ripping or tearing.
Jasmine looks confused as Bones starts examining some of the bodies, and she says, I knew that this was a town of my people, but goblins? Why are there goblins here?
Looks like these goblins got here. They must have raided the city before whatever that creature is. I wonder what woke such a creature from the deep.
Or is it possible that those goblins came with that creature and it became hungry? At least I can assume what Archer says is true. It appears there was a skirmish before this creature decided to devour what was left of you.
Whatever it is, I don't want to interact with that thing if we can help it. Is there any reason that we should stay here, or do we try to sneak back and loop around the creature and just get the hell out of here?
I think the less time we spend in danger, the better. I don't know which is more dangerous, to stay here or to try and sneak back.
I think we need to give it some time to finish its search. I mean, it thinks there's something here. Eventually it's going to decide that whatever it was, it's gone or never existed in the first place.
But then it's gonna come back, and I don't want to be here when it does.
Maybe this is the best way to avoid it. The manor's huge. It's obviously not taking up the whole place. I'm sure we can avoid it quite easily in here.
Well, as long as... all right, you want to stay in this keep? That's fine, but we should at least find something that's useful. Make this worth our while. I'm still looking for a guardhouse. It stinks in here. And he just starts to walk out of the main room.
Is there gear on these bodies? Does it look like there are weapons or anything?
Sure. Yeah, you can recover some gear. Mostly swords, because they'd still be sheathed, or that would have been replaced in their sheaths. Anything being held would have been dropped, been scattered elsewhere. So you can find swords fairly easily. Maybe a spear, maybe a shield. You don't find any crossbows, but if this is a keep, there's certainly a guard room.
I think Jasmine would grab a shield.
Okay, cool.
I actually really like that idea.
She has to probably take a small shield, right?
Shield light?
I would imagine.
Yeah, because I think large, like a heavy shield is probably
unwieldy.
too big.
Oh, yeah.
Jasmine grabs a shield. Probably an Easterling shield, right? So it's got a crest like an Easterling.
Yeah, probably.
It probably has the seal of your father. What does his crest look like?
It's a white dove against a blue background.
Archer picks another door,
Okay.
a side door to the big chamber, and just begins his search. He's
Okay,
basically searching until he finds
The guardhouse,
the
yeah.
guard,
Okay.
the guard room.
So the keep has various rooms that all are in similar states. There may be bodies, broken doorways, there may be things scattered everywhere. So as you pick your way through these rooms, you encounter various scenes of despair. Eventually, you find the guardhouse. Can I have a perception from whoever would like to make it, just to see how fast you find the guardhouse? And this is only to determine where the creature is when you finally find it.
2 success, 2 threat.
Okay, so you find it pretty quickly. Fast enough that that you're not in threat as you search through this room of it coming back. So the thing is, this room does have crossbows, but no hand crossbows, because hand crossbows are exceedingly rare devices. What you find there is a crossbow and heavy crossbow. Now, the heavy crossbow shoots farther. It's got range long, whereas the regular crossbow can only shoot medium range. And heavy crossbow has pierce 3, where the crossbow has pierce 2.
Upon finding the guard room, Archer is elated, like, yes, now this is what I'm talking about. And he walks immediately up to the biggest, baddest looking crossbow that he can find.
It's like 3 feet long and heavy
he sees
as hell.
He almost is drooling. He's like, oh, look at this beauty. But then when he goes to pull the crank to put in a bolt, you see him start to strain, and he realizes, like, this is more than he can handle. But now he's kind of in this trap of his own making, because he doesn't want it to look to Jasmine as though he can't pull it back. But he's like, oh, this crank, this defective material, and he chucks it and just tries to play it off as if it's not. And then
You throw it, it clatters among the ground, and it kind of like scatters a bolt here or there and makes a fairly large noise, which causes everyone to wince. And you let the silence settle again, you realize you're still safe.
He then goes up and grabs a more standard crossbow and pulls it back and goes, now this is what I'm talking about. Easy, reliable. It's exactly what I'm looking for.
It's not your hand crossbow, it's not Mallory, but it's good. It'll work.
Bones knows that that the gear that he was able to scrap together after the war was pretty poor quality, and being in an armory like this, he takes the opportunity to see if he can find something besides his old busted up rusty shield and kind of a crummy mace that he scabbed off someone's body.
There are certainly swords here. There are also halberds, which are probably used ceremonially for the guards. There are large and small shields. There are also flails. So various weapons of war. You can take your pick from what's here.
What are the stats on the large shield?
You have a shield right now, right?
I have a light shield, yeah.
Okay, so it has +1 damage and crit 5 instead of 6. It's 1 encumbrance heavier, and all of its defensive deflections and inaccurates are 2 instead of 1.
I'll swap that out for my other shield.
You reach down and you pick up a shield, heavier shield than the one you're using. You set yours aside, and yours has the same crest that Jasmine's has, because all of these are Easterling shields.
Jasmine looks at her traveling companions sifting through weapons and upgrading their gear, and she thinks about what use she's brought to the group so far, and she realizes that she hasn't been able to do much to defend herself or anybody else, and she really doesn't like feeling like the damsel in distress that Archer called her at one point. And she doesn't know how useful she'll be, but she walks over to one of the smaller crossbows and picks it up and tries to mimic Archer and pull back a bolt.
Jasmine's a quick learner, so she, after watching it once, seems to pick it up. You can use a crossbow if you want. However, it is two-handed, so it's the shield or the crossbow. You can carry both, but you can't use them. And she's probably now at her encumbrance or close to it, because she's got a lot of...
5 plus brawn?
Yeah, so she has encumbrance 6.
I mean, she's not carrying hardly anything right now, but yeah. So she'll find like a leather strap to attach the shield to, so she can carry it on her back, and she'll carry that crossbow. She brings it over to Bones and Archer and kind of like hefts it up, and she says, "You guys will have to teach me how to use this."
So as you're grabbing all of your gear and replacing your equipment with better equipment, or your missing equipment with equipment, you can see out the window. You're on the second floor of the keep. So because the keep is risen up anyway above the other houses, and now you're on the second floor, you can see most of the village beyond. And the sun starts to set, and it casts this kind of red-orange glow over the rooftops of the villages below. And it's quiet and beautiful for a moment, until you see that thing somewhere in the village itself clawing its way over the rooftops or through buildings, through alleyways, with no regard for what it destroys as it does so. And it creeps its way back to the keep, jumps the wall, and starts crawling somewhere deeper in the keep below you. You can hear it as it kind of descends somewhere within the labyrinths below. At some point, the sound of it, this big, heavy footfalls and scrapes as the bones kind of scratch along the walls of the corridors it's walking through, bounce around the keep itself. At some point, giving you the sense that it's all around you. You stay silent for a moment, backs to the walls, trying to control your breathing. Then it goes silent as it falls asleep once again. Thank you for listening. If you like the show, please share us with your friends. One of the best ways that we can grow the show is through word of mouth. Another great way to support the show is through ratings and reviews. Every 5-star rating and review that we receive helps others to find the show. If you'd like to connect with us, you can shoot us an email at meltingplotpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter @plotmelting. All music was written and produced by Zachary James Kolkman. Sound designed by Jeff Henders and Zachary James Kolkman. Jasmine from Aladdin was played by Rachel Kamstra. Bruce Banner was played by Zachary James Kolkman. Sterling Archer was played by Silas Sheffer. Leonard Bones McCoy was played by Tippett. And I'm your host, Jeff Henders. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.